Night had fallen, and the mountains whispered with the weight of ages. Between their jagged crowns of stone, veiled in mist and guarded by enchantments older than memory, a city of white towers shimmered like a star caught in the world's embrace. Gondolin. Few living souls outside its gates even believed it real. To most, it was rumor, a dream spoken in half-forgotten songs. Yet here it stood, gleaming with marble streets and silver fountains, untouched by war, untouched by time. But perfection carries its own fragility. The camera of the mind drifts low, past streets where elven children laugh beneath lanterns of crystal, where music spills from balconies like rivers of starlight, and where the banners of the House of the King ripple softly in the mountain wind. This was not merely a city. It was hope itself, built in defiance of the shadow that stretched across Middle-earth. Its people believed themselves hidden, their walls eternal, their beauty unbreakable. At the heart of Gondolin sat King Turgon, wise yet proud, seated upon a throne carved from white stone. He was beloved by his people, a father to the city itself. His vision had turned a valley of wilderness into a haven, a beacon for the scattered elves who sought safety from Morgoth's iron grasp. Yet beneath his crown lay the quiet burden of foreknowledge, whispers of prophecy, carried on the voice of the sea. Far from the marble halls, another figure gazed upon Gondolin with different eyes. Tuor, son of Huor, mortal man and stranger in this city of immortals, stood upon a terrace overlooking the valley. His journey had been long, guided by visions and by the hand of Ulmo, the Lord of Waters. To him, Gondolin was both marvel and warning, a beauty so perfect it could not last. He had seen the tide of fate, the fire yet to come. And though his heart yearned for the peace of these walls, he carried a message that gnawed like iron within his chest. The doom will find you, even here. The words of Ulmo, deep and sorrowful, echoed in his mind. But how could he speak them? To tell this people, their laughter still ringing, their pride still burning, that their sanctuary was only a mirage, destined to shatter? He feared the truth would be drowned by their disbelief. And yet, he could not remain silent forever. Beyond the walls, the shadow stirred. In the far north, Morgoth sat brooding upon his black throne, his crown of iron weighed heavy with malice. For years he had searched for Gondolin, hating it most of all the realms of elves, hating its hidden joy, its defiance of his dominion. To him, Gondolin was not merely a city, but an insult. And Morgoth's hatred was a fire that never dimmed. In the stillness of the night, a chill swept through Gondolin's towers as though the mountains themselves shuddered. Somewhere in the deep caverns beneath, a single raven stirred, carrying with it the omen of betrayal yet to come. But for now, Gondolin dreamed. The moonlight bathed its spires in silver, and the sound of fountains filled the air like distant laughter. Lovers walked hand in hand beneath the arches, poets sang by the firelight, and the smiths of the houses labored late into the night, forging weapons they hoped would never be used. Only Idril, daughter of Turgon, felt the unease stirring beneath the beauty. Her heart was gentle, her gaze sharp. Where others saw endless safety, she saw cracks in the illusion. She alone listened with gravity to the mortal Tuor, whose eyes carried the shadow of truth. In him she found both fear and love, fear for what he had seen, and love for the courage that brought him here. Together, they would walk the narrow line between hope and despair, their voices drowned by the music of a city that did not yet know it was already dying. Gondolin was alive. And, because it was alive, it was vulnerable. High above, the stars wheeled silently, ancient witnesses to countless rises and countless falls. The city below glowed like one of their own, a fragile flame caught between eternity and ruin. And though no cry of war had yet reached its gates, the first notes of tragedy had already been struck, like the low tremor of a distant drum. The last stronghold of the elves in Middle-earth had begun its final song. Morning broke across Gondolin, spilling golden light across its white walls. Bells rang softly from the towers, summoning artisans, scribes, and guards to their daily rhythms. The city hummed with life, an island of peace in a world swallowed by war. But beneath the splendor, an undercurrent stirred, subtle but unrelenting, like the first ripple before a storm. Tuor walked through the streets, his mortal presence both curiosity and wonder to the elves around him. Children ran at his side, eager to hear tales of the wild lands beyond the mountains. Merchants greeted him with respectful bows, though some whispered after he passed, "Why had a man, bound to the brief span of years, been brought into their timeless haven?" Only Idril Celebrindle, the king's daughter, walked beside him without hesitation. Her silver-golden hair caught the sun like woven flame, and her voice, though gentle, held a quiet gravity. "You still carry the weight of what you have not spoken," she said, glancing toward the mountains that enclosed their world. Tuor's jaw tightened. "Ulmo's warning is not for me to hoard. Yet your father, your people, do not wish to hear it. They see strength in these walls. They believe themselves beyond the reach of shadow." Idril's gaze fell to the bright marble beneath their feet. "Pride is a silent poison. Gondolin drinks deeply of it." She looked back at him, eyes clear with conviction. "Speak, Tuor. Even if none will listen, I will." Their words hung between them like the toll of a distant bell. Far above in the royal halls, King Turgon received his council. The chamber glittered with banners of every noble house, the Hammer of Wrath, the Golden Flower, the Fountain, and many more. Lords and captains stood arrayed in rich garments, their voices rising in argument. Some urged vigilance, scouts to be sent, walls reinforced. Others laughed at the suggestion. Has Gondolin not stood hidden for centuries? They boasted. Did not the Vala themselves veil it in secrecy? Morgoth has searched in vain. He cannot touch us. Turgon listened, silent, fingers curling against the carved arms of his throne. He remembered Ulmo's words long ago, the warning that Gondolin's glory would one day draw ruin upon itself. Yet he loved his city too fiercely to abandon it. Here, his people flourished. Here, the elves had carved beauty from despair. Could he cast all that aside because of a doom that might never come? When Tuor entered the chamber, silence followed. His mortal step echoed against the marble. Kneeling, he raised his voice with the strength of truth. "My lord," Tuor began, "I was sent not by chance, but by command. Ulmo, Lord of Waters, speaks through me. He warns that Gondolin will not stand forever. Morgoth hunts for you even now. The walls you trust will not endure the fire he brings." A murmur rose among the council, shock, scorn, disbelief. One lord laughed outright. "A man comes into our halls to speak of doom, and we should tremble? Gondolin is untouchable. No mortal knows its gates, save him, now standing before us." The words landed heavy. Suspicion flickered like kindling. Some eyes narrowed, already searching Tuor for treachery. But Idril stepped forward, her voice carrying like a bell in the storm. "Do not dismiss the messenger because of his race. The Vala do not choose lightly. Ulmo has spoken to our people before. If he sends a warning now, it is because danger is near." Still, the chamber was divided. Some wavered, others hardened. And through it all, Turgon remained still, torn between the love of his city and the dread of prophecy. That night, Tuor and Idril stood upon the high walls. Below them, lanterns flickered like stars scattered across Gondolin streets. Beyond the mountains lay darkness unbroken, the vast unknown where Morgoth's army stirred. "They will not heed me," Tuor said bitterly. "Not yet," Idril answered, her hand brushing against his. "But the truth will not be silenced. One day, they will see. And when they do, it may already be too late." Her words settled into him with the weight of inevitability. He gazed at the city, so alive, so unprepared. For all its splendor, Gondolin had no shield against pride, nor against the whisper of betrayal that even now stirred in secret hearts. In the shadows of a distant hall, unseen, another pair of eyes watched, dark with envy, sharpened by desire. Maeglin, nephew of the king, airless and embittered, looked upon Tuor and Idril with a heart already twisted. The seeds of ruin had been planted. And though the city still sang with joy, its melody carried an undertone of sorrow, faint but growing. Gondolin's fate had begun to tighten like a noose. The days that followed seemed unchanged to the people of Gondolin. Festivals lit the courtyards, laughter rose beneath the arches, and the smiths hammered out new works of beauty in their forges. Yet for those who had heard Tuor's warning, silence lingered heavy in the air. It was a silence filled with denial, one that pressed like a weight upon the chest. King Turgon, proud and reluctant, withdrew further into his chambers. He spoke little, even to Idril, and when he did his words carried the tone of a man clinging desperately to the dream he had built. He wanted to believe that Gondolin's beauty was stronger than fate, that his walls could keep death at bay. But fate had already found a path inside his gates. In the northern shadows of the city, Maeglin watched. His dark eyes followed Tuor and Idril as they walked together through the gardens, their voices low, their laughter unguarded. Each smile they shared cut him deeper, like blades drawn across the heart. For years Maeglin had harbored a forbidden desire for Idril, a love poisoned by envy and obsession. Now a mortal man, a stranger, a fleeting spark compared to elven eternity, had claimed what he believed was rightfully his. One evening, as the forges hissed with steam and sparks, Maeglin spoke with bitterness to his captains. "A man," he sneered, "is welcomed into the house of the king, trusted as counselor, beloved by the princess. What place does a mortal have among us? He will wither like grass in a single season, and yet he dares to stand as though he belongs." His words were met with uneasy silence. Few dared challenge the king's nephew, but fewer still shared his venom. Yet envy is a fire that does not die alone. It spreads, consuming all it touches. And Maeglin's fire had only begun to burn. Far beyond the mountains, in the iron wastes of Omband, Morgoth brooded on his throne. The Dark Lord's servants had scoured the world for signs of Gondolin, but its veiled valley had resisted every eye, every shadow. Still, Morgoth's hatred was patient. He believed no light could shine forever without faltering. On a night when the winds howled across the plains, a whisper reached his ears. A whisper carried by the lips of a wandering scout who had been seized and broken under torment. The tale was incomplete, but it spoke of hidden valleys, of walls too high for mortal eyes, of a city radiant in secret. Morgoth's interest sharpened. "Find it," he commanded, his voice like iron grinding on stone. "Tear the mountains apart if you must. Gondolin will be ash beneath my feet." The first breath of doom had begun to stir. Back within the hidden city, Idril sensed the shift even before it revealed itself. One night, standing beside Tuor beneath the starlit towers, she spoke softly, almost as though the words themselves were dangerous to give shape. "There are eyes upon us," she murmured. "Not of Morgoth, not yet, but of one who walks these very halls. Someone watches, waiting for us to falter." Tuor frowned, scanning the darkness beyond the balcony. "You mean Maeglin?" She did not answer at first, but her silence was enough. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weariness of one who has seen too clearly. "He has long carried envy in his heart. But envy, when ignored, grows teeth. My fear is not what he feels, it is what he might do with it." Her words lingered like a chill. The twist came not with the sound of horns or armies at the gate, but with a moment far more intimate. One afternoon, Maeglin found himself alone with Tuor, the mortal he hated most. The air between them was thick, every word laced with tension. "You do not belong here," Maeglin said quietly, almost like a blade sliding free of its sheath. Tuor held his gaze, steady, unwavering. "I belong where Olmo has sent me. If you cannot see that, then it is your own blindness, not mine." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The forge behind them hissed, sparks falling like embers in the night. Maeglin's hand twitched near the hilt of his sword, but he did not draw it. Not yet. Instead, he smiled, thin and cold. "Every fortress falls, man. And when Gondolin burns, you will understand how small you truly are." Tuor said nothing, but the words sank deep, like poison. That night, Idril dreamed of fire. She saw the white towers consumed in flame, the laughter of children silenced, the fountains turned to steam. She woke with a cry, trembling in Tuor's arms, the echo of Olmo's warning heavy in her heart. And though the city still shone in beauty, a fracture had split through its foundation unseen, but spreading. Gondolin was no longer merely threatened from without. Its doom now walked among its people. The hidden kingdom's fall had already begun. The summer sun blazed over Gondolin, glinting on its towers of marble and crystal. The streets thrummed with song and laughter, as though the city itself sought to defy the darkness lurking beyond its mountain walls. Yet for Tuor and Idril, joy had become fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. Every night, Tuor dreamed of water surging through the streets, of fire falling from the skies, of the voice of Olmo thundering in his ears. Prepare, lest all be lost. And every morning, the same silence greeted him from the throne of Turgon. The king still refused to act, torn between the love of his city and the fear of abandoning it. It was in this silence that betrayal found fertile ground. Maeglin wandered the northern hills beyond the city, driven by restless anger. His envy of Tuor had curdled into hatred, and hatred into reckless defiance. He cared little for the warnings of Olmo, little for the oaths sworn to Gondolin. His heart beat only for Idril, and Idril had chosen another. It was on one of these secret wanderings that fate found him. Orc raiders, scouts of Morgoth, fell upon him in the shadows of the cliffs. Outnumbered and dragged before the black standards of Omband, Maeglin should have perished. Yet Morgoth's servants spared him, for they sensed the bitterness in his soul. And so Maeglin was brought to the Iron Crown. In the throne hall of Omband, he stood trembling before Morgoth, the great enemy, whose shadow smothered the very air. Morgoth's voice coiled like smoke, dark and irresistible. "You hate the man," Morgoth murmured, his gaze piercing as a blade. "You envy him. I see it in you. Why serve a city that exalts him while denying you what your heart craves?" Maeglin's voice was raw, desperate. "Idril should have been mine. Tuor has stolen her, and with her, the future of Gondolin." Morgoth leaned closer, iron crown glinting in the firelight. "Then give Gondolin to me, and I will give you her. You shall be king when the ashes cool. Her will shall be broken, and you will rule her fate." The words were poison, yet they sank deep into Maeglin's wounds. Pride, jealousy, longing, all twisted together until his soul bent like iron under fire. And so, in the darkness of Omband, Maeglin betrayed the secret of Gondolin. He told Morgoth of the mountain passes, the hidden way, the guarded paths that even the wind barely touched. The fate of the city was sealed. Back in Gondolin, no one knew of Maeglin's treachery. The city thrived in its illusion of safety. But Idril felt the change. She moved through the halls like one listening for a note no one else could hear. Her dreams grew darker, visions of falling stone, of her people crying out in fire. One evening, she sat with Tuor beneath the lanterns of the garden. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "If my fears prove true, we cannot rely on my father's will. We must prepare in secret." Tuor frowned. "Prepare? You mean a way of escape," she said firmly. "Tunnels beneath the city. Paths hidden even from our own people. If doom comes, there must be hope for the children, for those who cannot fight. We will not let Gondolin perish without a remnant." Tuor studied her face, fierce and unyielding. In that moment, he saw the strength of Idril not merely as Turgon's daughter, but as one who bore the weight of her people's survival. He took her hand. "Then we prepare together." And still, Gondolin sang. Festivals lit the summer nights, lords paraded through the streets in shimmering armor, and the fountains sparkled as though mocking the doom creeping ever closer. None saw the endless columns of Morgoth's hosts gathering in the north, Balrogs with their whips of flame, dragons bred for destruction, and countless orcs, a tide of darkness poised to fall. In Omband, Morgoth smiled, for he held the key to Gondolin's gates. And in Gondolin, Idril worked quietly with Tuor, carving hope out of stone, whispering warnings to those she trusted, watching Maeglin with eyes that saw too much. The storm had not yet broken, but its clouds were massing, black and heavy, over the last stronghold of the Elves. Soon, the White City would burn. It began not with horns or warning cries, but with silence. On a summer dawn, the mountains trembled. From the northern horizon came a low, endless rumble, like the growl of the earth itself. Birds scattered from the cliffs. The waters of Gondolin's fountains quivered, and the light of morning seemed to dim as though a shadow had spread its hand across the sky. Then came the fire. Great dragons of iron and flame poured into the valley, their scales glistening with molten heat. Behind them surged an endless tide of orcs, their black banners blotting out the day. Balrogs whipped their fiery lashes, the ground itself cracking beneath their tread. Gondolin's veil of secrecy had been torn away. The hidden city was hidden no more. The first cry of alarm rang from the northern watchtowers. In moments, bells clashed across the city, their song of joy twisted into a dirge of terror. The elves poured into the streets, some with swords in hand, others clutching children and treasures, all staring in horror as the mountain passes vomited forth Morgoth's armies. On the high walls, Tuor seized a spear and shouted above the chaos. "To arms! Defend the gates!" His voice cut through the terror, rallying soldiers of every house. The hammer of wrath, the golden flower, the harp, the fountain, all marched to their banners, their shining armor reflecting the last glory of Gondolin. At their head rode King Turgon, crown upon his brow, his voice fierce with defiance. "Gondolindrim, sons and daughters of the hidden city, let Morgoth learn that even in ruin we burn brighter than his shadow." The people roared, and the battle began. The gates of Gondolin crashed beneath the dragon's weight. Flames swept the streets, turning fountains into boiling steam. Elven archers loosed arrow after arrow, yet many fell weeping as their shafts shattered upon iron scales. In the courtyards, steel clashed with steel as the houses of Gondolin fought with desperate valor. Balrogs stormed the towers, their whips cutting down captains where they stood. One by one, the proud banners of Gondolin fell into fire. And above it all, Maeglin revealed his treachery. With cold satisfaction, he struck against Tuor, seizing Idril and their young son Arundel. "She will be mine," he snarled, dragging her toward the walls. But Tuor's fury was like a storm. Steel rang against steel as they fought, flames roaring around them. At last, Tuor hurled Maeglin from the heights, his cry lost in the roar of fire as he fell into the abyss below. But the victory was bitter, for the city burned. Amid the carnage, Idril led those she had prepared in secret. Through hidden tunnels carved in silence, she guided mothers, children, and the wounded away from the slaughter. Tuor fought beside her, carving a path through orcs with bloodied blade, each step bought with lives left behind. Above, King Turgon stood upon his throne one final time. The tower shook, the roof cracked, yet he would not flee. Raising his sword high, he called upon his ancestors, his people, and the Vala themselves. "If Gondolin falls, let it fall upon me." And so it did. With a roar like thunder, the great tower collapsed, burying Turgon beneath stone and flame, king and city falling as one. In the streets, the battle became slaughter. Dragons belched fire into houses, Balrogs cut swathes through defenders, and orcs filled the air with screams. Yet, even in despair, the elves fought with a brilliance that defied doom. Lords fell one by one, their houses annihilated, but their courage burned brighter than the flames that consumed them. Through the chaos, Idril's voice rang out, steady and unbroken. "This way. Hold to the path. Do not falter." Her calm became the heartbeat of the survivors. Tuor, bloodied and weary, carried their son in his arms. Behind them, the city they had loved, its music, its fountains, its shining towers died in fire. When at last they emerged from the mountain's secret way, night had fallen. The survivors looked back, and their breath caught. Gondolin was aflame, the valley a furnace of ruin. Its towers toppled, its light extinguished. Yet even then, a single star pierced the smoke above, gleaming cold and clear. Idril, her face streaked with ash and tears, whispered, "Hope is not dead. So long as one star remains, Gondolin's light endures in us." And with that, the survivors turned from the burning city, carrying with them not just loss, but the fragile seed of a future yet to be. The hidden city was no more, but its fall would echo across ages, remembered as the night when beauty defied darkness and hope walked out of fire. The survivors moved like shadows beneath the mountains, their steps slow and heavy, as though every footfall carried the weight of a world lost. Behind them, Gondolin burned still, its smoke twisting into the heavens like a black scar upon the night. The city had been more than stone and tower. It had been laughter, song, and the fragile dream that beauty could remain untouched by evil. Now that dream was ash. Tuor walked at the front, Erendel cradled against his chest, the boy's wide eyes reflecting both terror and wonder. Idril was beside him, her face drawn but unbroken. Every so often she turned back to look at those who followed, the mothers clutching children, the wounded borne on makeshift litters, the soldiers limping, their blades red and weary. All that remained of a kingdom walked in silence, bound by grief. But even grief can shape destiny. When dawn broke over the eastern hills, the survivors reached a high ridge. From there, they looked back upon the valley that had once held their home. Nothing remained but fire and ruin, towers collapsed into rubble, fountains turned to steam. Yet in that ruin, the first light of morning fell upon the smoke, turning it gold, as though the city's last song had risen into the sky itself. Tuor placed a hand upon Idril's shoulder. "We live," he said, his voice rough. Idril nodded, though tears shone in her eyes. "And because we live, Gondolin lives still. Not in stone, but in us." Her words rippled through those who heard, a fragile balm against despair. Among the people, whispers grew of Erendel, the child born of man and elf, whose eyes carried the depth of the sea and the brightness of starlight. Many believed it was no accident he had survived, that in him the threads of fate had woven something greater than the fall of any city. Idril held him close, her gaze both protective and prophetic, as though she sensed the roads his feet would one day walk. The tale of Gondolin would not end in silence. Far away, in the halls of Omband, Morgoth smiled upon his victory. Yet even he could not silence the whisper of doubt that lingered in his dark heart. For though Gondolin was ash, survivors had escaped. And where survivors walked, so too walked memory, defiance, and the spark of vengeance. The Dark Lord had won the battle, but the War of Ages was not yet his. In the years that followed, the tale of Gondolin spread in secret across Middle-earth. Wanderers carried it like a flame in the night, a story of pride and beauty, of betrayal and ruin, of a people who stood against the storm even knowing they would break. To those who listened, Gondolin became more than a city, it became a warning and a promise. A warning that no fortress is eternal, no pride unbreakable. A promise that even in the deepest night, light can endure through those who carry it forward. On one quiet night long after the fire had faded, Idril stood beneath the stars with Tuor at her side. Their son slept, cradled in her arms, his small chest rising and falling like the tide. The air was cool, the night vast, and the stars shone with a brilliance untouched by ruin. Idril whispered, not to Tuor, nor to herself, but to the sky above. "Remember us." The wind stirred as though it had heard. Somewhere far away, the sea sighed against the shores of a world that would never again see Gondolin. Yet the stars did not falter. They gleamed eternal, their light spilling across the dark earth like a blessing. And in that light, Gondolin endured, not as a city of stone, but as a memory of beauty defiant, as a song sung by those who had seen both fire and starlight. For even in the darkest night, the stars still shine. And so too did Gondolin, carried forever in the hearts of those who survived.